Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining me, Costa, on News MTV. And this is the agenda, the program that you like most. And you know the obtaining situation in the country, the challenges of the economy, the challenges regarding the political disputes. You know, of course, the witnessed and characterized by flash demonstrations organized by the MDC. Of course, we are now almost 2 years after the coming in of the new dispensation, and to discuss some of these challenges that are being faced by the people of Zimbabwe, my guest for today is Deputy Defense Minister Victor Matemadanda. He is also the ZANU-PF Commissar. Honorable, I must welcome you to the agenda.
Thank you.
Let me just start by understanding from your side. You are the War Veteran Secretary General, right? What's the state of the welfare of the war veterans?
It's bad. It's bad because it was not fully attended to from 1980. And whatever efforts that we are making cannot compensate for the time lost, for the non-caring effects of those years that there was no care. So, for example, the effects of diseases and wounds that were not attended to from 1980 up to some time later cannot be reversed, and this is the dire situation. But government is trying. The current dispensation, you will understand that we are in the second reading stage of the bill that is going to cater for all the veterans of the liberation struggle, and also to try and improve on the welfare of the veterans. So yes, efforts are being done, but those will not compensate for time lost.
So if you would want to mention maybe one or two challenges that you are saying, these are the prime challenges that you are facing.
Of course, the economic factor. We would have wanted to solve most of the problems, but most of the times we do not have enough money in our economy to support the empowerment, the treatment, or the welfare services of the veterans of the liberation struggle. So our first hurdle is a problem caused by the effects of the economic sanctions.
You are regarded as one of the people who played a very influential role in the resignation, if I want to put it that way, of Robert Mugabe, and the coming in, the birth of the new dispensation. And the challenges that you are facing today are the same challenges that you were facing during Robert Mugabe era.
No, they are not. Of course, the challenges, from where they are coming from, will be the same, but the effort to resolve them is different. The determination to have them sorted out is different. You remember that at some stage, Robert Mugabe would say, war veterans have got no role in this economy, in this system. They just should worry about their welfare. And that is shutting out, an effort to shut out the veterans of the liberation struggle. But the current dispensation has actually incorporated the veterans of the liberation struggle, so that even in governance, in the system of ruling, they represent themselves. And I think that is great effort. And you say the problems are even Mugabe, from the war. The injuries we are talking about are not post-independence. They are pre-independence, and they have not been attended to. So we will not divorce the past from the present. It is the same people and the same system in terms of what should have been done. And what I can happily say is that the current dispensation is taking measures, of course, with these characterized economic problems, but the will is there, and the empowerment aspect is being done.
I also understand that did you have maybe some sort of an agreement with the opposition during the November 2017 protests? Because right now there are people who are regretting And what would you say to them?
What is the regret?
No, I'm saying there are people who are regretting their participation in November 2017 protests.
And your question was,
which ultimately led to the rise of
your question was, did we have any form of an agreement?
Yes.
You remember you said they played a critical role,
yes,
in that, and you remember that we encouraged Zimbabweans across the political divide. We did not invite a particular political party, and of course this does not mean that MDC as a party did not support, but we have had no agreement of any sort with any political party. Because remember, myself and other people that were in the leadership of the War Veterans Association were an expelled lot from ZANU-PF. So we did not stand then for any political party, and we had no capacity to engage a full-fledged political party to say, let's come and sit and have these arrangements, because we're not a political party ourselves. But we invited Zimbabweans, and our understanding and feeling is that those that attended, including the late Dr. Morgan Changrai, Dr. Joyce Mjuru, Vana Chamisa, Vana Monzora, everyone, they attended and were given time to make speeches, but I don't remember any speech that said, I have come here as MDC, because remember we were saying this stage that we were was above political party affiliation and a code for Zimbabweans. But if people were having misconceptions or misunderstandings of the requirements and expectations, that's another issue. But I agree that people from all the political parties that were there attended and contributed. But at no point did we address people as MDC, ZANU-PF, or whatever. We addressed people as citizens of Zimbabwe. If they are going to say we had an agreement by maybe the look of things with the people of Zimbabwe, that we wanted to have some sort of a future, that I would agree, but not as a political party.
You and me, we should agree that there was this polarization in 2017.
Yes.
There was this huge polarization.
Yes.
And you, as a champion of the coming in of new dispensation,
yes,
you were emphasizing on unity.
Yes.
People
and
uniting,
I still do.
Uniting. And now this is a regret, even from some people in ZANU-PF who are saying, post-Robert Mugabe, things didn't happen the way they expected.
One day I was defining democracy and ruling out Abraham Lincoln's definition of the rule for the people by the people. No, that will mean that people will always agree on a particular thing together. But there is diversity of thinking. Being in ZANU-PF does not mean that a person can have a different opinion from another ZANU-PF person. Being in MDC will not mean that also. So we cannot take it that because some people are saying this is not what we had wanted, therefore it was a wasted effort. But people are allowed democratically to think the way they like and say whatever they can say. But life goes on, and what we want and what we emphasized on that time was to remove this polarization. And I have not stopped talking about that, to say yes, we have differences in the way we want to approach politics or governance or whatever, or we have issues of ideology that we differ. But first and foremost, let's agree that we are Zimbabweans. Let's agree that if someone is a leader in ZANU-PF, in Indu, in ZAP, and so forth, they must know that they lead a section of the people in Zimbabwe. Therefore, they are classified and identified as leaders. And if we are leaders, we must behave and do things responsibly, so that responsibly, so that whatever we do does not destroy the efforts of rebuilding this economy, of developing this country, of making this country a productive country again.
Let's look at the former cabinet minister and ZANU-PF sitting political member Chinga Dube. He said Zimbabwe missed an opportunity to have been united.
That you can ask Chinga Dube. I cannot speak for them. For him, he's alive, and like I've said, everyone is free to their It's democratic right that they speak their mind. They think the way they want, but we cannot take the opinion of Chinga Dube as a national subject.
So, which means that is part of the regret that people, in terms of...
I've agreed that people are bound to think the way they like, and they are free to do that. But this is a revolution, if you want, that happened in 2017. And we were all alive, and we are still alive. There is no reason, in my view, to regret. But what we should do is to engage, so that if there are things that we are not sure of, if there are things that we do not understand, then they must be resolved by talking. You have talked about how we prime the people to come, to be able to work together over seeing or looking, being beyond political party affiliation. And it was because we were talking as Zimbabweans and would have wanted that spirit not to die, where we would agree that we think differently, but we are Zimbabweans together.
Let's look at, we want to close this section of the birth of the new dispensation, but one of the narratives that the president adopted then when he was expelled from ZANU-PF, he was sort of saying the voice of the people is the voice of God, meaning to identify himself with the people who are destined.
Do you know?
And it seems now from cross sections of
do you know that? Do you know
that he has changed from that stance? From that.
Do you know the kind of rule that is gotten from a vociferous crowd? That is called mobosity. A decision that comes from a mob is called mobosity, and nowhere on earth is that worked. But when the president says the voice of the people is the voice of God, what he actually says is, if you are elected councillor under MDC, no one has got a right to say you are not supposed to be councillor. When you are voted to be an MP under ZANU-PF, no one has got a right to say you are not supposed to be MP, because the people have spoken. And in this case, the people spoke that ZANU-PF has got this number of MPs. The people spoke that Emmerson Damzo Mnangagwa is going to be president. And those that talk against the voice of the people are those that are resisting.
But in my thinking, I think you know how the police treated you before the coming in of the new dispensation.
Yes,
and I clearly understand that when you are saying the voice of the people, you are saying respect the people, see, advancement of the constitution that say they should protest if they are not happy.
But it's the same constitution that gives the police the right to police this country. And who produced the constitution? Is it not the people? And that is their voice. Their voice said there must be a police force. There must be an army. There must be an intelligence corps. There must be every setup that we have came from the people, and that is the voice of the people. But the same voice of the people through the constitutional arrangement gave the police force the parameters of acting. And it becomes dangerous and bad when the police operates outside the responsibilities that the people gave them. For example, you move around Harare or any other town. It's rare today that you see a policeman holding a gun. But I've been to many countries. There is no corner of a street that you do not find an armed policeman.
Let's talk about the people of Zimbabwe, as you put it that way, but I understand the majority of them were the MDC. Are you happy with the manner in which the crackdown that they have been experiencing, especially from...
You said the majority of what?
No, what I'm saying is, even Robert Mugabe said that he was the people who marched in November were from the MDC.
Robert Mugabe was not part of the people that marched, and he has no authority to talk about people who marched. I was in front, if you want. I was commanding. It is me who asked the people to march from Zimbabwe grounds to State House. Robert Mugabe was in State House, not Zimbabwe grounds. He knows nothing in his grave, unfortunately. So we cannot be guided by a person who had. When you are talking to a person who was in command, I have told you, I never invited MDC people, I never invited ZANU-PF people, I invited Zimbabweans.
That gives us an opportunity also to get into our second discussion. Of course,
Yes.
one of the things that you didn't want, that you didn't like during that time was the issue of corruption.
Yes, I still don't
And
want
that seems to still persist even in the new dispensation now.
Well, who is corrupt? If I may ask.
No,
Because we are fighting corruption, we have encouraged government. The president has constituted a commission that should fight corruption constitutionally. And we are not going to take the law into our own hands and say, Uyu Aba cannot, this one is doing this, therefore, Inini, I stand judge.
You heard what the PG said, saying it's difficult to fight corruption because
He must resign.
there are certain sections that
If
are
he
captured.
cannot do his job because something is hindering, then the best thing to do is to resign. Otherwise, if he does not resign, he must sort the mess out.
Well, then also let's talk about the issue of cartels.
Yes.
You and me, and recently we had a meeting with suspended ZANU-PF youth executive Godfrey Tsenengam and Louis Matutu. We had a meeting with them, and these are the guys who are right now on the forefront saying corruption must stop.
And
Why is the part suspended then?
No one has said they mustn't talk about corruption. What the party said to them when they did it the first time, the party has got a constitution and an operating procedure which no one should go beyond. And when they committed this wrong thing at the first time, they were warned not to do it again. But I remember the president saying, this offense you have done was supposed to see you suspended or what. But because you have talked about a thing that we all want to fight, we are going to give you a second chance. And next time you want to talk about this, be procedural. So it is a case of not being procedural that we are talking about. It is not about why they talked against corruption. Everyone speaks against corruption. I don't remember a gathering that is addressed by the president where he does not talk against corruption. But we are using this Roman and Dutch law, which deals with evidence and procedure. You must have your evidence to incriminate anyone. You don't just waffle. You don't just, talk. Maku wa murain. No, this is not how this law operates. If you have your evidence, take it to the appropriate authorities, and then it is dealt with. If you think that that evidence can be destroyed, give it to other people, so that when this evidence that you give to the authorities is misplaced or played around with, then you still have another piles of V11s. This is what we want. But you cannot go about labeling and giving people names without evidence.
But what pushed the party from effecting this kind of a measure on them when they have mentioned people
I have
who are not part of
said the party has got operating procedures. The party has got a constitution which binds everyone. Whether they do good or wrong, they must be bound by the constitution. The constitution is clear about how people should do things. So your question should be, were they procedural or not? Were they supposed to be given a second or third chance? Then that is up to the disciplinary committee, not me and you. Because here we have a constitution that was drafted even before they committed these crimes.
So when you had a meeting with them, what was the outcome? Did
I was clear I was going to disclose that after talking to the president.
I understand one of the person that they have mentioned, there is business person, Kudakwashita Gure. He seemed to be an untouchable person, isn't it?
Touching, but I've seen people greeting him. What do you mean touching?
Yeah, in terms of right now, they've mentioned his name and they've been suspended from the party.
Okay. How many times have they talked about him?
No, I remember this was for the first time.
No.
Last time.
Even in the first time, they talked about him. It is not about names. People want to give wrong conceptions about this whole thing. It is, like I'm telling you, about the procedures used to do it. And we have a party that has got a constitution, and people cannot be blaming for trying to show the procedures of the party. If people are not satisfied by a decision, there are always other democratic ways of addressing that. But you cannot say, why did you follow your constitution? We are constitutional. We are not like some parties that can be overtaken by a person from Norway. Tomorrow they are a president. No, ZANU-PF has got procedures.
I have interacted with people, quite a
Yes.
lot of them, and
Yes.
I have read lots of stories. People do appreciate the president's call for corruption to stop. But the challenge they are having right now is since that gospel started, no one has ever been convicted.
But
that's
I
the challenge
also,
that people are having now.
since that gospel was started, I have never seen a person that has brought evidence of any
But
corrupted.
you have Priska Mfumira and the whole documents that have been disclosed before the courts.
And she was in jail, she was in prison, and the process of another arm of government gave a bail. And it is not about the president, it is not about parliament, it is not about ZANU-PF. It is the independence of the judiciary, which the president should not interfere with, that granted Priska Mfumira bail. And if anyone has got a question, if people think there is corruption, let them direct it to the judiciary.
So are you happy with the judiciary in terms of how it is handling this corruption
What
cases?
morality do I use to arrive to that decision? Ndinenge ndichishandisa ruzivo nenjere dzipi to say the judiciary, I'm happy about it, I'm not happy about it. Remember, it is a board, it is an arm of government that is there because of our constitution, which you and me made. And we gave them exclusive rights to deal with issues. And it's not here where we can say, because they've done what I do not want or what I did not expect, then they are good or bad.
This is an institution that hasn't convicted anyone so far in terms of corruption.
Unfortunately, I'm not trained as a lawyer. I'm a politician. And that question, good or bad as it may, can be directed to people with a legal mind.
Okay, but we are going to give our viewers some opportunity maybe to pose maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions before we close. But maybe before that, let me just also enter into this recent pronouncement by the government of opening up a voluntary tax levy on civil servants, and also the establishment of the garrison shops. We have heard about them, that are meant for the uniformed forces where they can access affordable basic commodities. What would you like to say?
About the 2%, that is
The 2.5%, yes.
all right. That can be answered by the Minister of Finance. I'm not qualified myself in the issues to do with finances and their management. So the Minister of Finance is the competent person to answer that question. But about garrison shops, this is not a new phenomenon. In fact, the standard establishment of a garrison, if you know what a garrison is, it must have set buildings and amenities. And a garrison shop is one of the requirements of the setting up of a garrison. So it is not a new phenomenon. And when someone said opening, that was wrong. It was supposed to say reopening, because maybe they closed. But when I left the army myself, I can go with you in the KGC 6, I mean the Bitongogara Magama barracks, and show you the garrison shop that I left operating.
What would you say to critics who are saying this is just a measure to pacify the military because
it's because they don't follow Mao's principles. Mao says no investigation, no right to speak. It's out of ignorance. Like I've said, if you want to, if you can Google now and say you want to see the standard garrison, it has got definite things and buildings that you should have. For example, if you are in a war situation, it is a security risk to allow soldiers to come for shopping into town. They've got to have their shops in the camp. They've got to have everything that they would want, at least the basic commodities should be provided for in the garrison area, in the cantonment area. So this is a requirement of the setting up of a garrison. And those that think it's pacifying, let them get it from me.
So what
a garrison shop is a standard requirement of the establishment.
And what happens to the rest of the civil servants? Some of my Kumberengwa, where I'm coming from, some of
Kumberengwa kukamba emasoja ere. Tutora news kamba emasoja. Tutora zomberekwa.
Of course, no. What I'm trying to say.
I know, but you see, this is where people get it all wrong, and they don't know how to. All right, panoenda masoja kuondo vari kumberengwa vanosariri.
No, but we are saying this is a move meant to, of course, affording the uniformed forces.
No, it is a standard requirement. It's not a move.
And what
it is a standard requirement. The rest did not join the defense forces. We have gone to DRC, we have gone to Somalia. We never invited the civilians to go with them. Why didn't they go? If they want the same rights and privileges with soldiers.
These are people who are facing strife of hunger right now as we speak.
I agree, but there have been hunger. There have been hunger elsewhere. Famine, but people never demanded to be treated as soldiers.
So how should they overcome these challenges?
That is an economic problem, and I don't think this is your platform to talk about economic issues. But if you have got an economic issue that you want me to address, let me address an economic issue. But if there are people that would want to have same establishments with the soldiers, then it will be the first of its kind. Zimbabwe will be the first country to be like that. It will be the first of our Zimbabweans to think that our soldiers should be treated like Yombuya in Berengo. And then it would mean that Kanataita Wondo next time, Yombuya should be prepared Kuinda DRC. Kuinda wherever we deploy soldiers. So the fact that Musoja ano Buddha Mukamba knowing kuti ndinogona kunofa kana kusanofa means that this person has got some level of a commitment which the people that are protected by them should not question and doubt.
Your former colleague Jonathan Moyo says...
How does he become my colleague?
No, you have been in the government for some time together, isn't it? And that's why
being in the government doesn't mean I'm colleague with anyone.
Well, let's look at what he is saying. He is purporting that there could be a coup.
Is Jonathan Moyo the standard barometer for this country? What I know Jonathan can do best is to steal money from ZimDev. This is what is successfully done. And if we are to talk about Jonathan, let's talk about the dubious things that he was doing. He has made a lot of predictions. When the vice president was sick, he was giving the impression that he talks to him, and the next time he was going to come, he was going to overthrow the government. And when that did not happen, he sees the president and the vice president hugging. He says, but Mnangagwa did not go to receive Chiwenga at the airport, and it is because Mnangagwa does not love Chiwenga. No, all that confusion and pandemonium coming from Jonathan. And if we are going to make Jonathan a subject of discussion, then that would be unfortunate, because Jonathan has never said a thing that is going to see a day's life.
Fine.
So he can dream of a coup. He can dream of President Mnangagwa and Vice President Chiwenga being in bad hands or in bad spirits. He can dream of whatever he wants. But remember, I am almost Kuduze Neva Kuruwa. I meet them. And if you wanted to know, Kanavari too, they don't even treat themselves as brother, as the president and the vice president. One of my brothers. Vari three. They are like that. And I see them. Then don't want people making fun of Kutuwachuenga Wakaramba Mvurapa Kumnamat. But they don't know Kutumunari on medication. And prescribed times and ways of doing things. They don't want to look at that. They just want to make an impression out of nothing.
I think they were just connecting the dots because there were also some reports that he spilled, some champagne at the airport when he was receiving the plane from Malaysia. So when he also refused to take water at National Sports Stadium, so people
spilling champagne.
Yes.
You make those are funny things. If you've not seen one, it becomes funny when it is done by Vice President.
So I must appreciate that you have put to bed all those rumors about the coup or what and the disagreements. But there's also one pertinent issue that I want to understand before we move to the last section, is the issue of the involvement of the military personnel, if I want to put it that way, in the recently troubling issue of the machete-wielding violence in the country. Usually you should say something, Mr. Deputy Minister.
About what?
The involvement. There have been allegations that some members of the military and were being involved in the machete-wielding violence.
Okay, them doing that?
As individuals.
Okay, that then needs evidence. I cannot talk about the speculation. Of course, there's been an effort by some mischievous people to paint our soldiers in bad light. But let me tell you one thing. They don't know the consequences. The Zimbabwe Defense Forces are a revered force. They command respect internally, regionally, and internationally. This is why you see them participating in a lot of international missions where soldiers are required. And we have never received a single, and I don't think you have heard about it as a reporter yourself, about any wrong behavior by a Zimbabwean soldier. I served for 20 years. I've gone to missions. They have continued to go for missions. Kana kumitisa, we have never received reports zekuti kune Zimbabwean soldiers kwasara vakadzi 15 vane nhumbu dzemaZimbabwean soldiers, but they are human beings. They've never done that. Why should they take machetes? Our soldiers are not trained to use machetes. Our soldiers are trained to use weapons, standard weapons. If they wanted to misbehave, they would use better weapons, not machetes. They don't even know how to handle a machete. If someone was saying they were using bayonets, and when they fight with the bayonets, they don't fight like ordinary people. They've got a standard way of fighting. And we see people imitating soldiers. And because we are trained soldiers ourselves, we know the behavior and the movements. The movements of a soldier are always calculated. Even when walking. When we are standing here, when we pace up, and I know you don't know what I mean by pace out, because you're a civilian. But when we pace out, a soldier can tell who a soldier is between us and who a civilian is. But because people don't know that soldiers do things with a standard measure.
Well, what I think in terms of the integrity of the military, that is not questionable. Perhaps maybe apart from what happened on the 2018, on the 1st of August.
What did they do?
What the Motlanthe Commission reports says. And
I don't want to talk about that.
What I'm saying is there is that appreciation.
And I don't want to believe that there is any blame that can be put on the soldiers, but I don't want to talk about this issue. Everyone is free to their opinion and mind. And when a commission has made a ruling, we as law-abiding, we accept and put corrective measures. And I think this particular issue has been addressed, and as a government, we have responded to and accepted whatever recommendations the Motlanthe Commission has said. But that does not mean we do not have our side of the story. But because there is a ruling, we are law-abiding. We are not like those who say when the Constitutional Court said you lost, they say Constitutional Court should be banned. We don't behave that way.
Let's take 2 questions from our viewers. The first one is saying, does the government believe there is corruption? If so, where do they think the corruption is taking place?
When they say government, who are they referring to?
This is Elvis Tanaka Mtomba.
No, I'm saying when they say government, who do they mean? Every one of us. This is also another wrong conception that you get even from members of parliament. They don't know that they are an arm of government. Running good government. But the government is composed of 3 arms. And the other arm is the legislature. But you have members of the legislature who do not know that they are government. And our people should know that together we form a government. And as for being responsible for fighting corruption, it is not upon a particular individual. It must be all of us. Instead of writing this, he must have produced evidence about a person who is corrupt. Remember, when we say our law is based on procedure and evidence, it means that if you make a mistake on the procedure, for example, there is a time when I was acquitted, when I was given, in fact I was acquitted because the police arrested me before finalizing investigations, and they wanted further investigations, but they had already broken the procedure, and because of that I was acquitted. So they must understand that this law that we are using is premised on procedure and evidence provision.
Let's take one last question from Emmanuel Nyakonda. He's saying, can the minister say something about sanctions having been invited by the MDC vis-a-vis what the EU says?
EU imposed the sanctions on us, so you will not refer to it on the morality, on the direction of Zimbabwe, because the same EU is the grouping that we fought against during the liberation struggle. Why did we fight them? Because they had interest. The same EU is the grouping that was owning land here, is the same grouping that owned and still owns mines here. And they cannot support anything that, or any government that is going to try to empower its people on the land. Because once the people are empowered on the land, it means mines are being taken away. So EU cannot be a moral partner in dealing with sanctions, because they are the people that impose the sanctions. Remember, we were under oppression for close to 100 years. And who was the oppressor? Britain, being supported by who? America. And who called for sanctions? Britain. And who did the actual bill? America.
But I understand in 1980 you buried all those grievances and say you are now able to come up with the One Zimbabwe United. But all those, some of these problems began at the beginning of the new millennium. We did not
bury. What we did was a process of reconciliation. We, being true, faithful, but not knowing that we were playing with people that were playing on time. And when we said we wanted the reconciliation, it was us who offered reconciliation to people who did not accept. They thought when we talked about reconciliation, we were going to abandon the reason for going to war, which was our land. And unfortunately, we could not forget that. And we rightfully and morally demanded our land back. And we even today demand misoro ya nambuya vedu na sekuru vedu emadzimambo edu avakaenda now, we want, which they took as trophies, we want that back.
Minister, it was nice speaking to you, but I understand that recently you have been meeting with students, university students, and among other young people. What sort of challenges, were they raising to you?
Well, they are worried about accommodation. They are worried about the high fees, the loans. They want them to be, expedited. The general conditions, environment of learning, they want that improved, and reasonably so. And we are going to engage agencies of government to make sure that those are addressed. But further to that, I was talking about the thrust of the Second Republic, the new dispensation, on now that we've gone beyond austerity measures. Now we are going into production and development. What is the focus of our government? It is empowering the youths. It is make sure that we now begin a gradual legacy transfer from us, the old, to the new, young generation, to the women, to the previously disadvantaged people of our society. And this is what we are doing. This is what I was telling them, that the president, having seen that most of our youths were not empowered in terms of having land, he ordered a land audit, which is almost in the completion stage and has made quite a lot of land available. And I was encouraging not only the youths, but also even people in the diaspora, not inclined on political party affiliation, but for as long as they are Zimbabweans, they mustn't miss this chance of having land. Remember, the first stage of the land reform, some people were saying this is a political gimmick, it's a ZANU-PF thing, and you don't know how many people that seemed to be armed who come into this office to say, help us have land. Because but that is a real thing.
But before the land issue, what would you make of a country or universities, the state of universities 40 years after independence, and you have got students who are lacking accommodation? That tells you a lack of planning from the government.
Unfortunately, you think so. But you are not looking at other factors. How many universities did we have in 1980? How many universities have we opened? How many African students passed the O-level before 1980? How many A-level children do we churn out of high schools this time around? That is a factor that before even planning. And let me tell you, this planning should be holistic. From the parents, vari kuzvara vana, handiti, kusvika pana anyone who deals nenyaya dzekuti nyika iite zvakanaka. We have seen production of men, young, intelligent people, and they pass kuchikoro. Our people, though under hardships, can afford to take their children to school, and the children pass. And we cannot be offended for having an intelligent youth or young people. And what do we do to cater for that? That is another question, which is economic. And the fact that we go to address them, that means we want to understand how best we can help them. And recently, because of the accommodation challenges, the president has appointed a minister responsible for national housing.
So
and tell you what,
top of the list in terms of priority on things that you want to address, what tops the list?
You when you are in rulership, in leadership, I don't think it would be proper to say out of these problems that we received, this one is the most important, because different people are affected by different problems at the same time. But the question to me is, do we have enough resources to address all the challenges?
Sure.
And if we have, why should we be choosy? We must address all the problems. For example, they will talk about the need for Wi-Fi, computer hubs, because some cannot afford a computer, and yet the current learning needs the aid or the help, the use of computers. And they will say, why instead of having a library full with books, why don't we have a Wi-Fi, internet, computers, so that we research from a computer? And so they are not going to learn like we did, just Takura must beg, they can have their books in a phone.
Sure.
And so the problems that we have are not even of planning. These are the challenges of change. And change cannot be at times predicted. Vamwe vanhu vakamuka rimwe zuva vachiti tiri kuenda kumunda, vachidzoka munda nemusha kwaka hakusina. And you have got to now manage the situation according to what has emerged. And no one knew, for example, kuti mwana ari kuenda kunoita grade 7 angade phone inogona kuve access to Wi-Fi and so forth, so for use in class. And we never thought of it, but this is the change that is there. And these are the global changes which we should instead adopt to as a nation, as a generation. We cannot run away from it. And it will be dangerous for us to begin now blaming each other, say, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? When you go in some offices, typewriter, kocho. But here's,
things have changed, yeah.
Yeah, you have a phone, which can predict, so this is the changing world, and no one anticipated it. But these are the changes that are unavoidable. And the best thing for Zimbabwe, the best thing for our people, our nation, is to get together and adapt to change.
Honorable, it was nice talking to you. Thank you so much for affording time.
Thank you. I hope you'll come again.
Thank you so much for following News MTV. This was the Defense Deputy Minister and ZANU-PF Commissar Victor Matema Danda was speaking to us today. And until next time, thank you for following.